Cool. Welcome back, fam. We last left off at part 4, and we're picking up at part 5 where we left off. So we're going through how this astrology situation works. When we left off before, we were doing an exercise where you were God. And as God, you did all these great things, but, for who? And who are you going to share it with? And who are you going to talk to it about? Who's going to pat you on the back, quote unquote, if there's nobody else around? So if God, or the highest consciousness, right, can create, so this is awareness or consciousness that creates for a reason. It creates out of, for lack of a better word, as far as the way that we can understand it, out of desire. It decides to, right? So you have decided as God to create. You're at day 4, and this date is the date that you're creating something that is the basis for almost everything we're going to go through as we go forward. You've created light, and you've created lights in the heavens. And again, you don't have to believe this. We're using this as if to move through and learn how this system works, because what I'm going to say to you is not going to make a lot of sense if you can't accept the fact that, okay, let me just check this out and see if there's anything there. If there's nothing here, it shouldn't threaten any existing beliefs that you might have, right? If you're solid in where you stand and where you believe, then the only thing that getting into this as far as understanding how it works would either confirm that, I'm good, that's all cool and all that, or it might give some insight so that things that you've tangentially come across in your life begin to make sense. And this is, so again, the sun is the luminous body, because as lights, I would call them luminous bodies. Again, we know all of these except for the sun and the moon as planets, but in the ancient times, these guys were actually known as the gods. And then in biblical times, or in those writings, the gods became angels. And we're going to get into all of that, but all we're trying to do now is to give an outline that basically God is going to continue creating, but now he's going to have some cohorts. There's going to be witnesses to the future creation. And we'll find that out when we get to, again, you on the 6th day, when you show up on the set. So the sun, for roughly every 30 days, is said to rise on the eastern horizon in each of these signs in succession. Every day, it kind of goes through this cycle, in every 2 hours, right? But it will rise, at least it will appear to rise, for roughly a month on the eastern horizon. It will show up in one of the signs, and of course everything is moving and rotating, and so on and so forth. The idea is, if, say for instance, at the time that you're born, you have a location, latitude and longitude, you have the exact time of your birth, and if you have that information, they have charts and all kinds of things galore that can tell you what your sun sign is. I'm sorry, actually what your rising sign is, as well as your sun sign. And the reason why I say rising sign. Wherever the sun is in this cycle at the time of your birth is what sign you are said to be. So if when you're born, the sun is in Virgo, meaning it's, what is this, September, roughly you'd be August, September in Virgo. Okay, because this is the fall coming up, right? This is summer, and we're going into the autumnal equinoxes here. So let's say you're born in September, early September, then if that's where the sun is, then you're called a Virgo. But there's another sign. This is called a rising sign. And so at the time that the sun, say, is in Virgo, if the planet coming up over the constellation coming up over the eastern horizon is one of these other constellations, let's just say in this case it's Aries, then your sun sign is considered to be Virgo, but your rising sign would be considered to be Aries. Why is that important? It's important because the sun sign, in other words, wherever the sun is at the exact time of your birth, is considered to be what the world sees you as. Your personality, your presence. It will display, attributes that we're going to go through that are attributed to these different signs. Your rising sign, however, is said to show kind of what your hidden side, in other words, your hidden aspiration. This is the cover, this is who you are that we see, but the rising sign will tell you a bit more about that person, because this is kind of like subconscious or in the background, because everybody focuses on the sun sign, right? Oh, I'm a Virgo, I'm a Scorpio, blah, blah, blah. But if you have what they call a birth chart, the birth chart will tell you where all the planets were at the time of your birth. And believe me, this is a complete, literally, it's a science. So I'm just outlining it because I'm not that well versed in it to go into heavy details. But the idea is that all these planets, so Mercury, Venus, Mars, so on and so forth, these are all in different positions at the time of your birth. That is kind of like a cosmic snapshot. And the reason why that's important, and this is where we're going with this, is that these characters, and we're getting ready to kind of launch into what they bring to the table, are said to make up everyone's personality in different proportions. So in other words, if you're a Virgo, you will appear to have a bit more of a proportion of the Virgo attributes, but you have a mix of all of them to a degree, right? But every birth chart is different, which is why with 7.7 billion people on the planet, you're not going to get any carbon copies, because not only does the rising sign, sun sign, it also depends, you don't see it on here, but the moon is a big part of this. What houses were they in? These are called houses, as well as signs, right? We'll go over that. But I'm just trying to give you an idea that, as we talked about before, that's the sun's course in the sky, right? The apparent, when it comes up on the eastern horizon in March, late March, it's popping up in the sign of Aries. So it's the rising sign. But when you're born, it's the sun sign. Wherever that thing is determines your, what we call sun sign or star sign. But the rising sign is important just as well. And I'm sure most astrologers could confirm that. So all of these guys have different attributes, but these guys, this is a proposition to you. I mean, I know this is the case, but again, we're just doing everything as if. these planets, what used to be known as the gods, latter became the angels. The reason why they're called, well, we won't go into that yet. We're just going to focus on what do they bring into the table, and then as we move forward to man, we're going to go animals next. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that, because when we get to you, that's where all this stuff gets kind of pulled together, and you'll see kind of where it's going. So we're going to propose that here on day 4, you are creating these lights in the heavens are basically beings. This is a proposition. These are living beings, these planets, a plane, that means a bit more than, again, what meets the eye. They bring to the table the movement through these houses, right? That brings about, let's take this off. Okay. This is there's a lot here, but here's the point. Every sign is said to have a ruling planet. And that's, the guys we just talked about. But initially, when these systems were developed, the only planets that could be seen with the naked eye were 7. So the sun and the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Those were the 7. That's why you have 7 days in a week. Saturn gave the name to Saturday. The sun gave the name to Sunday. Monday is from the moon. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, the names were, I believe they're Germanic now. The god Tu and Odin. Wednesday is for Odin, but it's all based on these guys, right? So the 7 visible planets that the ancient, and these guys were called the Magi or magicians, the same as supposedly the star from, that led the 3 wise men to Bethlehem. They were astrologers. That's why they were called the Magi, because in ancient times, the wise were the stargazers. And we see that all throughout the Bible. So these are the gods. And then, as we developed into modern times, other planets became visible because of, obviously, aided technology allowed a few other planets that are part of this mix to be discovered: Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Where's Pluto? Right here. Okay. I think the most recent one to be discovered was probably Pluto, maybe around 1930. Now they're saying Pluto, they've reduced it to being a dwarf planet, so, because of its size, but it's still part of the mix in astrology. So the gods, and again, this is an as if, the gods / angels, and we'll go in where the word angel comes from and why it's used, probably in the next installment, because there's so much here. These energies, because that's what they are. They're lights, but they're energies. Move through these houses. That's why this is called a house. And each house represents some aspect of your personality or character. See, we'll actually go through them real quick, one by one. And so, for instance, how I have them numbered, that's exactly what they're called house-wise. First house, second house, third house, fourth house, all the way around the wheel. And what we're saying is, for astrological or zodiac purposes, we always start with Aries, right? But Aries is the first house, but the planets are going to move through all the houses. So you have to kind of think of, planet, constellation, but also you have to think of house, because these guys move through the houses, and each house represents an aspect of your personality. And so at the time of your birth, the energy, the light, the angles of light the angels that influence, that impact your brain, are said to shape or give a template to the character of your life. Now, of course, you're going to have other influences, DNA, your parents, environment, all that. So it's not like this is determinative, but it is a huge part of the mix. It's like God said, let me take a template of 12 different, say you were building 200 homes. We're going to have 12 models because we're going to have 12 different plans. And then through these plans, these energies, these gods, angels, planets, basically are going to send out angles of light that impact your brain, okay? And we're going to go into the effect that it takes. But that's what this is all about. It's saying that these guys and these guys are in effect, and we'll go further on this, co-creators now. Or they're going to be co-creators. We're going to find out when we get to man that other people or other beings or entities get enlisted to be a part of the creation of man. Because up till now, it's just God and something called heaven, something called earth, dry land, earth, water, lights in the heavens. But the lights in the heavens, we'll go further along, and we're going to show that these are major influences in all of our lives, whether you know it or not. They're big. So in other words, basically, God is, this is a proposition. God is, it's like a kaleidoscope or, magic lantern. If you shine a light through it and you have different cutouts with different film on it, you get a red light, a blue light, a green light, shaped like a cat and a dog and a this. These houses with the light, for lack of a better word, emanating from them, the different angles of light, determining different aspects of you by how they impact, the angle of which they actually impact your brain. Because what you're going to find out, we talked about man as the measure of the universe. These 12 constellations actually connect or are related, that in your brain, you have what's called 12 pairs of cranial nerves. And those cranial nerves in your brain control your body and your mind for the most part. And so what we're saying is in the remember, we have a macrocosm, a microcosm. In the macrocosm has a connection to the microcosm. These have an effect on these. We're going to go much deeper into that, but that's the idea, is that these guys have an impact on humans who aren't created yet, which is why we haven't talked about meditation. There's no reason to talk about meditation because we don't have any meditators yet, right? But this is where we're going with this. So the first sign, Aries, is called ruling planet. Aries is ruled by the planet Mars, which was a god. If you notice, Aries, Ram, you go backwards, Mars, okay? Mars, and there's a whole lot of, look, in fact, let's just cut to the chase before we go through all these. Maybe we'll go through them in the next one. But you've heard the phrase, and we'll dig into them, but I just want to throw it out there so that we're not just going through motions to go nowhere. You've heard the biblical phrases like the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world. Aries, the ram, is a sheep, lamb, baby lamb, The Ram of God, you've heard of the golden calf in the biblical stories. The bull, the calf. You've heard of somebody called the Lion of Judah? You've heard of another character called the Virgin Mary? You've heard of a character called, this is Capricorn? Capricorn is ruled by who? Saturn. Saturn has an alter ego, put it that way. I don't want to get into it right now because it's very involving, but you've heard of a character called Satan? Well, that's a variation on Saturn, and we're going to get into why, okay? And the reason why Saturn is extremely important, because it is said that Saturn rules time. He's a lord of time. So, with the ring, around the planet, Saturn's ancient names will kind of tell you. If you go to the Greeks, Saturn's name was Kronos. Saturn became Saturn by the Romans, but prior to the Romans and the Greeks, Kronos, chronometer, time, right? Yeah, I know, it seems like, this can't, believe me, it is. This is where a lot of stuff you've heard about comes from. We'll talk about Scorpio. Scorpio, just as another point, in the biblical story about Judas betraying the Christ. And in that story, the Son is the Son, S-U-N, and the Son, S-O-N, Son of God, right? He gets betrayed and turned over to the authorities. It turns out, and this is no reflection on Scorpio, it's just a story. This is all mythology and a story. In the story, Scorpio actually represents Judas. That's because all of these characters over here are actually known as the 12 disciples, as well as the 12 apostles. And then you also have them in your head as the cranial nerves, but we'll get into all that. But I'm just showing you that we're going somewhere with this. Not asking anybody to believe it. You don't mind not believe, but this is the basis of a lot of what this society is built on, whether you've observed it or not. But Scorpio, the reason why he betrayed Judas, who in this context is Scorpio, betrayed Jesus with a kiss, is because when a Scorpio stings, it creates a mark that looks like two lips. So a kiss. So in other words, there are these roles move and are fluid, and they tell stories. And we're going to get into more of those stories because they form the basis of much of the religions that the world practices, whether they want to believe it or not, because astrotheology, which is what this is in a way, is way older than any religion that we have around now. This was probably, all those stories were written in the stars probably millions of years ago, before they were ever written and codified in books and religious doctrine. So we're going to shut it down right now. We're going to come back, same board, because again, we're getting into the show. We're headed to the big entrance of the star, but we've got to lay the foundation because the star is going to step right in to the lights. Till next time.